Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Takeaway Club, where I talk to interesting people across different walks of life to get to know their stories and, more importantly, how they got to where they are, including their motivations, habits, routines, and aspirations, some of which we can apply to our own lives. Hello everyone. Every now and then I do an episode that is nearly perfect in every way, and this episode is right there. And it has got a lot to do, it has got everything to do with the guest that I had. In this conversation, I had the absolute delight of talking to Vanshika Mehta, a freelancer who is creating all kinds of waves on LinkedIn. Vanshika has been freelancing for close to a couple of years now and is incredibly good and successful at what she does. And that has flawlessly translated into our chat as well. Whether it was a bad week at work or a hard time with our bosses, every writer or marketer has thought about taking the freelancing route at least once after we start our career. And this episode is the ultimate guide to getting there. We break down the ABCs of freelancing and go all the way up to Z, where Vanshi breaks down anything and everything that one needs to know about the freelancing journey. We talk about processes, pricing, red flags, tools, getting your first project. Like I said, everything about the subject. Whether you're someone looking to pick up freelancing or already freelancing, I guarantee there is definitely something new for you to learn from this episode. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into the conversation. Hey, Vanshi.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. So it's been a long time coming, this conversation.
Totally. I know we've had so many back and forths, but I'm really excited we're finally doing it.
So I thought a good place to start would be your story so far for people who might not have heard of Vanshika. So who's Vanshi and what is her story?
That is such a nice way to ask. I honestly, my story goes across continents, across places, people, things, and it's just a very interesting story of events. So I was born and brought up in Dubai. That's where I kind of did my schooling, and family and all are still there. And then I went to Boston to study. So I finished my undergrad in marketing and management from Northeastern in Boston. So I was there for a significant amount of time. And post grad, I worked a little bit and then I came to India and worked a little bit in corporate India and then decided to take, the big leap of faith and jump independent. It's really been a very, very exciting journey. I mean, I never imagined I would be freelancing and, doing the kinds of things that I do today. I mean, the kind of exposure I've gotten, the kind of projects I've gotten to work on, it's just crazy awesome. And every day is so exciting. And when Vanshika is not working, Vanshika is listening to podcasts, which is why I love doing podcasts because I listen to a lot of them myself. Very, very like active podcast listener. Like I try and listen to at least three, four a week. Other than that, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, excessively. And when I'm not working, I'm probably trying to also find people to talk to, networks, communities. I enjoy learning from people. So when I'm not working, I always try to have as many conversations as I can. It doesn't even have to be with someone who is in my industry and doing the same kind of thing. It can literally be anybody. And conversations are just, you never know where they'll land up. So, I mean, I'd like to at least start and have those conversations, and whatever path it goes down, that is not in my control, and I'm totally okay with that.
That's true, and I think that can be a big uh, help for freelancing as such. I want to come back to that aspect of Vanshika as a person later in the conversation, right? I've,
Sure.
I've, I've, I see you on LinkedIn, and I realize how active you are, and really going out of your way to build these good relationship with people, and providing so much value because you just like to help people, and you just like to put up these communities together, right? So I'll get back to that in a while, but i'll I want to talk about your freelancing career, this transition from a corporate gig to doing freelancing full time. So what's the transition like? So how is it freelancing treating you different from a regular 9 to 5 gig?
So many ways. I mean, honestly, freelancing is something so different. You have to really take the jump before you can even like think of it. You know, there's not really one straight answer, but I think the biggest challenge slash difference that freelancing gives you over a 9 to 5 is freedom. I mean, freedom to pick your own projects, freedom to pick your price, freedom to work when you want, where you want. These are just things you can't get in corporate, and you can definitely get them when you're freelancing. So it's a very big mind shift, and requires a lot of strength to be able to take that decision and stick with it, because the first few months are going to be rough and tough. I mean, when you join a job, you are guaranteed a salary at the end of 30 days. With freelancing, that's not always the case. And I mean, with a job, you're continuously guaranteed X amount of money in your bank. But with freelancing, I mean, it's sometimes zero, sometimes it's minus 50%, sometimes you will earn like plus 200%. So you really have to kind of be prepared for these ups and downs, and be prepared for what's to come. I mean, it's such an exciting journey. You have to take it to kind of just get into it and have fun while doing it.
Right, right. So when you talk about this element of uncertainty, if I can put it that way, minus 50%, it's plus 200% uh, on a good week or a month. So what is your mindset like when getting into each new month, right? So it's very different, and in a lot of ways very straightforward for salaried people. Like you put it, you're guaranteed a sum of money, so pretty much all your expenses, whatever it is, it's going to be taken care of, right? Irrespective of what goes on in the month, to a large extent. So how do you approach things? What do you look forward to? How do you uh, prepare yourself mentally to navigate any given month?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, I have an amount in my head every single month that I need to earn. Also, I mean, earn means, earn in terms of my money, because, like, even if you're freelancing, right, like you still have to pay some expenses, be it your loan, be it your EMI, whatever. So there's two separate amounts. There's one which is the income amount, which is the total income you make in the month, and then there is so I mean, it's sort of like paying yourself. So it's sort of like your salary of what you can spend and do, and do whatever you want with it. That money is yours. And the reason why I say it's super important to be aware of financials, money management, financial planning, all of that. And the reason I became so aware is because, like you mentioned, when you work in corporate, it's a fixed amount. When you work in freelance, it's never a fixed amount. So that up and down, when it's up, it can be really, really good and you make a lot of money. But if you're bad with your money, you are going to spend it. And then if you have a bad month, for example, you will feel the repercussion of that. For example, recently I was working with a client and I had like 1.3 or 1.4 lakhs just stuck. And if I had not been good with money in terms of like putting money into savings, investment, spending, putting money that I can spend, all of these things over the last 10, 11 months that I've been freelancing, I would have been really, really screwed because that money came way later than expected. So, I mean, there are ups and downs, and you have to be very, very good with your money. Also, another thing is, in terms of emotionally and being mentally fit. Couple of months into freelancing, I realized, like, listen, I know I'm overworking and there has to be a better way to do this thing. So you have to set some goals and boundaries for yourself. So for example, like nowadays, like over the last, say, maybe 3 to 4 months, like I don't work the weekends at all, unless there's an emergency. I'm like, weekends I need to kind of just detox, de-stress, everything. um, and I think these are like the kind of rules that you have to set for yourself gradually as you get comfortable with workloads, managing time, all of that. So I think it's really important that, as a freelancer, you have to kind of take total control of your life. And while, there are many different aspects, like money is important, your mental health is important, your physical health is important. I mean, now with work from home and all of that, like even, people just get lazy and sit at home and don't even go for walks. And so recently, I mean, I'm not going to even be super proud of it, but it's been like 2, maybe 3 weeks, I bought myself a Fitbit and I was like, I have to go for walks. So now for like 45 minutes, 5 times a week or 4 times a week, I try and I go, walk around because I realized that I was not taking care of myself. So freelancing really allows you to kind of take charge of your life. You have no boundaries. You have, if you don't want to work one day, you get up and you don't want to work, that is fine. Your clients will not come and tell you like, oh, why are you not working. They care about their deliverables. As long as you are a smart freelancer, get them what they need when they need, and plan your time well. There are days that even in the middle of the week where I'm just like, I don't want to work, I just want to Netflix. And that is the reality. Like, I'm not even afraid of saying it. I mean, if I finish my work, I probably worked a couple of hours extra the night before or whatever, and I could totally chill if I want to. And that's just the sort of freedom that you can't ever get in a full-time job. So yeah, I mean, going into the month, you have to take a look at your life and your routines and your day to day, as a all encompassing kind of a thing. It's not just money, it's not just this, it's not just that. You are a sum of everything put together. So I would say, when you're setting monthly goals as well, um, take into account different things, like, if you want to meditate 3 times a week, you want to go for a walk 4 times a week, you want to pick up an art class, put these things down as goals and you will find time to make it happen. So yeah, I think it's a lot of freedom which can be very easily used for the better, compared to being in a job where you're like, oh, I only have Saturday and Sunday to myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
lot of benefits,
mm,
lot of cool things that happen.
yeah. To an extent, this pandemic has broken those barriers of a 9 to 5 versus doing something to your own schedule, right? So since we are all stuck in home for months on, so we have slowly trying to build our own schedules. Maybe I want to take an afternoon siesta, so I'll manage that with a couple of hours late into the night, and that has given a lot of freedom. But there is a lot about freelancing that generally don't get talked about, right? A lot of things that you mentioned now, it requires a degree of self awareness and self reflection every once in a while, because unlike a job, you don't have anyone hand holding you or guiding you for the week or for the month, right? You're entirely on your own here. So, do you think if when you consider all the aspects, all the the positives and the downsides and everything with freelancing, so is it a choice for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, it is a very different mindset, and I think, the easiest way to kind of figure out if you can do it or not is, I think it all boils down to discipline. If you are not a disciplined person, and uh, are someone who doesn't like routines, or can't deal with the emotional roller coaster that freelancing brings, then this is probably not for you. So I mean, in terms of that, it's like, being a freelancer, there are some days when you're just like, I just don't want to get out of bed, and it's 11 in the morning. Or like you said, you want to take an afternoon nap or whatever. But you can do all of that, but you have to be extremely disciplined and know that someone is paying you. They're paying you for your skill, they're paying you for the things you know. They're paying you because they trust you. And they're trusting you with whatever deliverable they are expecting from you, right? That way, I mean, in a corporate it's extremely transactional, but with freelancing there's transaction plus emotion, right? Because if you're new, for example, as a freelancer, building that trust, building that reputation, building a client list, is one of the hardest things to do. So I mean, it all comes down to, are you someone who can uh, you know be without boundaries but still know how to stick in, between boundaries, and get shit done. If you are someone who just likes to be, hey, I want to work only 9 to 5, and have like these sort of preconceived notions, then probably freelancing is not for you. You have to open up your mind, and if you can do that properly, I think you will be successful. So a lot of it comes down to discipline within your schedule, discipline with the way you talk to your clients, discipline with expectation setting, discipline in so many different shapes and forms. um, I think it all just boils down to that. I mean, if you can't live up to it, and someone who gives up easily, it's probably not a good choice for you.
Mhm, that makes sense. So, I mean, I have this one, but feel free to answer this one. Or are there like instances where you uh, took a step back and really enjoyed what you were doing? At the same time, where there are moments where you wished you hadn't been in this situation, you would have rather had a proper job.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ups and downs. I think the highest up, and for me, it's not even about money, because that is again something so transactional. Like, you do work, you get money, great. Everybody does that. Every freelancer has that. But I think one of the highest points recently was. So one of my clients was celebrating 6 years of their organization being alive, and I've been working with them for about maybe 3 4 months or something. And he very sweetly sent me a gift as well, with a note, a handwritten note. The gift was a water bottle with my name like engraved on it, and that's what he'd given to all of his employees as well. And I think that was just so touching as a gesture. I mean, it was just so sweet. And like I said, it's not about the money, it's these little things that really count and make that difference. Another instance would be, there's this friend of mine called Saurabh. He's a life coach, and he was the person that actually he was the person that actually convinced me to freelance. And he is so sweet. I mean, even like our relationship is just like we're such good friends, and whenever I spend time with him, the things that he says, the way that he guides me, he's always been my go-to person. Like, to have somebody who you can say that, like, if I'm stuck or anything, is it's very rare to find these kind of people, and I'm so lucky to have found someone like Saurabh. I mean, I wouldn't have been freelancing if it wasn't for him, because he literally put this idea in my head. And I think when it comes to lows, I mean, unfortunately the low is tied to money, because as a freelancer, you do your work, you get really excited, you submit your work, and then you don't get paid for it. And that's just one of the most disappointing feelings, because um, I think it's disappointing in two aspects. One is that, like, if you give a deliverable in and the client is like, oh, wow, this is so great, like, blah, 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 and they praise you, and, that's all great. But when it comes to paying, and they kind of are like, oh, it'll take me this amount of time, this thing, that thing, excuses, it feels really bad, because you're not sure if that was a lie or if it was just something to keep you a little happy and keep you going. And the second aspect is also to do with money, but it's like, when you have to chase clients for your money, because it gets really disappointing and frustrating, because you're like, I did the work, I did my things between whatever deadlines you wanted me to, everything was done, it was approved, like, why is the payment stuck, like, it's just very, very frustrating. And I unfortunately had to encounter one of these situations recently, and it got really messy. I had to, like, email the CEO of the company and be like, hello, my invoices have been pending for so long. While you guys got all the work you wanted, XYZ, and wrote up this, like, really heartfelt email. And it was just really heartbreaking to write that, because if you were an employee, they would have credited your salary, like, on the day of when salaries are done. But when you're a freelancer, they take it for granted, and they're like, oh, this is happening, oh, that is happening, and it just makes you feel really shitty about it. So um, I've touched wood had many more good experiences and bad experiences. And again, that comes down to discipline, and setting up measures for yourself so that you are protected. So um, for example, like, whenever I get on a new client, I send them an SOW, like a statement of work, so that it's all in black and white. Everything from your payment terms to your termination clauses to your payment schedules, if it's a month over month, to deliverables, to contact person, to expectation setting. So, for example, like, one of the clauses in my contract says that, like, I don't work weekends, and I'm available from, I think it says 11 to 7 or something like that, on all working days. So expectation settings, all of that, like, it's all down to being process oriented and disciplined. So no client of mine gets onboarded without an SOW and an invoice. And I'm very, very strict with my paperwork and all of that, and it's really helped me. So yeah, I mean, touch wood, I've been blessed with many more good experiences and bad experiences.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's probably, a testament to how you approach these things as well, right? Rather than just
Hmm.
transactional, really be a part of their process, what drives them and everything, right? So I can sense that from, whatever you put up on LinkedIn and from this conversation as well. Uh, when you say about your process, having this SOW, could you give a walkthrough of what your playbook is like?
Yeah, so I think I always insist on a phone call first to get anything even started. I mean, I don't rely on messages. You could be, I don't know, XYZ person with $1 million in your wallet, but till I talk to you, I will not take on your project. So that is rule number one. I've heard of so many people getting scammed on Facebook and on LinkedIn just because they're like, oh, I need to do this. This is my number. I'll pay you, blah, blah, blah. And they don't bother to talk to that person. So, rule number one is always, always have a phone conversation or a Google Meet. Uh, Actually, recently I met a client of mine in person. It was very refreshing. I mean, I know it's Corona and all of that, but I actually like went and met him, and it was very, very interesting. And there's nothing that can obviously substitute meeting in person, but given the times and stuff, do a Google Meet, do a call, do something. You need to hear that person on the phone and hear the seriousness in their voice, if at all. um, so that is rule number one, always do a phone call no matter what. Second thing is, always have every single thing in written. I think this is another rule that a lot of freelancers mess up with. So for example, like an SOW, a statement of work, it doesn't have to be complicated at all. It's just basically listing out and agreeing on terms that are mutually acceptable. So for example, like even if you're doing like a blog, an SOW would literally be like, blah 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 and blah 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 person agree that this is a deliverable, this is the costing, in case the word limit goes up, this, like, you have to think of all these situations, and just put it in there. Contact person, termination, all of these little things. So always have everything in black and white, because um, conversations can disappear. People will conveniently forget conversations when it's time to pay. There's just yeah, I mean, it has to be written and sent formally on your email. Ask them to acknowledge it, sign it, send it back. That is, I think, the biggest savior of my journey. um, Third thing is, most clients, I mean, like 90% of your clients should be ready to pay you in advance. And you have the right to ask for that money. um, if I mean, it's again, it's situation dependent, but most people who are getting into work with freelancers are ready in mindset to pay that 50% advance or 30%, whatever it is, whatever's comfortable. So for me, for example, like if the project is under a lakh, I do 50% advance. If the project is over a lakh, then I break it up into two or three payments depending on how long it'll take, duration, deliverables, looking at that, and then I build up a custom thing. But again, goes right into the SOW. Um, Another thing to be really cautious about in India is TDS. This is another place where I have gotten screwed over many, many times. So if you're paying, if a company is paying you, they are going to deduct 7.5%, I believe, TDS. So you have to add that into your pricing. Or at least communicate that, hey, I'm giving you this price, this is with tax or without tax. So I've made that mistake a bunch of times. So always be wary of what are you saying with tax and without tax. I think that'll be your savior, because at the end of the day, the TDS stuff is all like accounted for. But when you are doing your maths as a freelancer, right, you are saying that I want to earn X amount, right, X amount per month, and that doesn't take into account your tax getting cut and all of that. So you have to be smart about it, to be like, okay, if I'm charging you X amount, this is with tax or without tax, so that it's all clear.
But
Next thing
but
I
you,
would
but you
say,
just, I just had a clarification around this TDS, so I'm not really good with math numbers or anything to
yeah,
do with taxation or this. So how does taxing work with freelancing? So when you say you have to add that amount when you're negotiating with a client, so is it something that once they pay you, what you will essentially be paying to the government, right? So you mean like you want to include that as well in your quote, or basically.
yeah, yeah. So yes, you're correct. So basically, 7.5% goes from them. It's tax deducted at source, right? So it goes from them to the government in your name. So the money is not going anywhere. But the thing is, say for example, you want 50,000 as money that actually comes to you. You will add in the 7.5% when you are quoting them or whatever. You tell them that, hey, 50,000 is without tax. If you are going to deduct TDS, then please add on 7.5%. So that way it's all in the clear. And then at the end of it, I mean, at the end, when you do your ITR, you pay income tax, right? So you do that income tax ka pura calculation, and then the TDS ka adjustment and all of that. But yeah, basically you have to be very careful on TDS and GST and all of that. Like, GST, I believe, is if you are doing more than 20 lakhs in a year, then there is some GST stuff and all of that. But hopefully one day we'll reach there. But obviously right now 20 lakhs is a very, very high amount. So I don't have to deal with GST right now, but TDS very, very often gets cut. And it's better to just clarify with your client if you are cutting TDS or not. Most likely TDS will be cut. So remember to add that into the amount that you are paying, getting paid, sorry. So yeah, just moving on. Other than that, once all this paperwork and stuff is done, I think the next important point is to communicate a lot with your client to build trust. So what that means is, for example, if you're working on a monthly project with them, right? I am very like particular about the fact that, like, okay, say we're starting on X date. Every Monday at 11 o'clock in the morning we will have a call to do a weekly catch up. So the thing is, like, even if you're working with someone, right, for a monthly contract, uh, it essentially means that you are setting up a boundary that, like, hey, listen, I don't mind being called during the week and like whatever, getting emails and all of that, that's all great. But ideally you should be looping around with them once or twice a week. Like, um, if you have that setup, that sets your client also in the right frame of mind that, like, hey, I know that every Monday at 11 I have a call with Vanshi, and Joe, whatever needs to be done in the week, I'll have that ready for her. So yeah, I mean, you have to kind of train your clients to work within the things that you want to work with. So for example, like, if I allowed all my clients to just call me whenever they wanted, unless it's something urgent, I mean, obviously there's that exception, but if I had to allow my clients to call me whenever they wanted, at whatever time they wanted, unannounced, I would be spending so much time on the phone and not getting work done. So to save myself from that, I agree on a date and a time with all of my clients that, like, hey, I will be happy to work with you through the month. You want one call a week, you want two calls a week, you want three calls a week, just let me know so that I can put it into the calendar, so that we're not like messaging each other like, hey, can we chat now, hey, can you do this, hey, can you do that? Because I will have to say no to you. I mean, I will have to be like, listen, I'm sorry, our call was yesterday. You should have thought of this yesterday. Unless it's something urgent. I mean, obviously, there's that angle to it. But otherwise, I mean, you have to train your clients on how they should work with you and how you work with them. So that's another like big savior. um, and then I think the last thing is, obviously, do your work, do it great, like, be communicative. Say for example something happens and you can't give it today and you can give it in 2 days, just let them know. I mean, at the end of the day, you all are human. Rather than going incognito, like, just open up and say like, hey, I'll give this to you in 2 days, is that okay? I don't think hell will break loose. I mean, it's not like something crazy is going to happen if you delay it that like by 2 days. So yeah, just don't go incognito, just communicate and tell them like, hey, I can't do this today, I'll give it to you in 2 days, and work out a solution. I mean, if that is workable, great. If not, you want to come to a compromise, great, that's fine. um, and the last thing I would say is, when you are working and you worked, and if the interaction was good, and obviously you want more good interactions than bad, right? Get a testimonial. I by default send out a testimonial email to all my clients when they're done. It's just a quick email. I have it. It's a template that I have ready. It just says, "Hey, would you please click this thing on my LinkedIn? Drop me a recommendation. Please talk about the work we did. Things about my service quality, things about actual tangible deliverables. What are the best parts of working with me? Anything of that sort. So sort of like a guideline. And yeah, I asked them, like, if you need any help, let me know. If you want me to look at it before you send it out on LinkedIn, let me know. I'd be happy to do that. And yeah, I mean, most of my clients have been very, very nice, and they've written me some really good testimonials. And yeah, I think that just kind of closes the loop on the entire working together kind of a thing. And I would also say, like, once you're done working with a client, that doesn't mean that you guys are now never going to work together again. So keep in touch with them. I mean, New Year's, birthdays, things happening in their city, health things. Like, for example, like, I checked in with so many of my clients during COVID, just being like, hey, how are you doing, how are things, just casual conversations, not even with the intent of like getting business. And yeah, non-coincidentally, I mean, now that we're talking about this, I worked with a client in 2018. 18, no, 19. I worked with them in 2019 for like a couple of months. And then they decided to grow their team, and every, like, there was just a change in dynamic. And been in touch with them ever since. I mean, we became friends because we worked together for so long. I mean, every Saturday I would go to their office. It was actually not even far from my house, so this was obviously pre-corona times. And yeah, I mean, it's been now a month and a half. And yeah, we began working again together because they were like, oh, we need someone to help with XYZ things. We know that these are your strengths, would you want to join back? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So yes, I'm back on a retainer with them, with slightly different terms. And yeah, I mean, it never harms to keep in touch with your clients, because you never know when they're going to need you again, or would need your services. And so yeah, just maintain that relationship and stay in touch with them. I think they are, if you've had a good interaction, I mean, there's no harm in just being on the record with them, and just popping in, saying hi, seeing if anything is there. But obviously, do it without the intent of like, hey, I'm reaching out because I want to get business from you. How are you? Like, don't take that approach. But yeah, it always helps to keep in touch with your clients.
I mean, brilliant answer as such. You basically gave like the A to Z walkthrough of how a freelance setup works, clearing up a lot of superficial understanding that I had. Right. So thanks for this answer. So I think
No
I'll probably
worries.
bookmark this somewhere and have a lot of people who's trying to do freelancing and they don't know where to start and uh, uh, there is uh, there is a genuine lack of a mentor mentee guidance, right, to this whole and again this is something tying back to your community building and uh, your WhatsApp group and stuff that you handle in addition to actually the work you do. You have done a brilliant job of trying to bring together that community, right? So where it's more than just a bunch of people siloed with their own projects, right? So you all help each other out and there is a degree of openness to the whole process that we are generally not used to seeing with freelancing, right? So I actually had a couple of questions there, right? So when one obviously what you have done with respect to that is amazing, right? But how do you deal with cases where someone is reaching out and you have all these close friends uh, Essentially, the entire group is trying to get a slice of the same pie, right? Let's say there is some client with a big budget thing. So, how do you handle that in that situation, right? So I understand at the end of the day there is only like so much work that any one person can take, and inevitably it is going to go to other people and everything, like that. But when you have a community and say you have this really big client, and they just simply reach out to your community as a whole, right? Because you have, again, because you have built up this very nice platform where they can interact with a lot of freelancers than they would have been able to if they had to take the traditional route, right? How do you ensure this cooperation amongst uh, freelancers in your community, and helping each other out?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I mean,
Sorry,
it
I
is
just
something
went
that
on and on about that. I just want to.
yeah, no, I got what you're trying to say. So even I think about it a lot, but let me just clear it up and answer your question in the best way that I can. Might not be the right answer, but it's what works for me. So I believe in the abundance mindset. Uh, there is a pie; it's a set pie. There are only X number of slices, and there are only X number of people that can eat out of it. But the abundance mindset, I think the major learning for me is to be happy with other people's successes and be proud of your own. At the end of the day, when you are freelancing, it's very, very competitive, but that does not mean that there isn't something there for you. I think there is plenty of opportunity. I mean, if you are an opportunity hunter, there is plenty of opportunity for everybody to get a piece of that pie. So the abundance mindset basically is kind of reiterating that, be proud of your accomplishments and be happy when your friends accomplish more or better or equal or whatever. So I think you have to go into it with that mindset. And when you go into it with the abundance mindset and the mindset of being someone who is maybe even a catalyst to someone else's success, your whole thing changes from competition to collaboration, right? Because that is how that's how you kind of, even if you want to grow a business, right, that's how you will grow, right? You collaborate, you work with someone, and you grow. So I mean, for me that has worked out really, really well because I know a lot of freelancers through LinkedIn, through the One Celebrate event, through communities, through WhatsApp groups. um, for me, like, if I cannot take on a client, I'm that kind of a person who will be like, okay, I'm sorry, I can't do it, but I know these three people who can. Why don't you have a chat with them? And coincidentally, one of my favorite clients, one of my best clients, is working with a friend of mine now for some other deliverables and requirements. And it just works out amazingly. And the guy who's doing the work, he keeps saying thank you to me, and I said, for what? I mean, I didn't do anything, I just introduced you to one of my favorite clients, and I know they're good guys, and working with them has always been a breeze. And I can't fulfill this right now, so you would be the best person for it. And even they trusted me because they've been working with me for like almost 2 years now. And so I said, yeah, I mean, I trust this guy. Like, reach out to him. He'll be perfect for XYZ. And I think that mindset shift is something that has always helped me grow. Like, like, I mean, there are so many times when, there are two sides, right? One time it's where the client is like, oh, I don't have the budget. And again, that's an opportunity for you to introduce them to someone and build goodwill. It's not an opportunity for you to walk away and be like, oh, I'm sorry, this didn't work out, bye. I take it as a chance to build goodwill, and I say, oh, I'm sorry, that sucks. I unfortunately can't go down to that rate, but I know XYZ people who might be able to service you. So no fake promises, just like I'll be happy to make an intro, I mean, have a chat and see if you can get it done through them. um, I mean, that has always worked out in my favor, because even, I mean, there was one client of mine a couple of months ago, and they needed me to work on something, but they also needed a graphic designer, and they didn't have the resources or didn't have the time to look for one. So I was like, I'll help you out, and I found them a graphic designer, and we worked together, and the project worked out great. So yeah, I mean, there's always room for collaboration, there's always room to build your empire, your goodwill, your trust, your name, by doing these little acts of kindness. So yeah, I mean, I would say that, just shift the way that you think about freelancing. I mean, uh, I mean, even when you're applying for a job, right, there is always going to be competition. There's not a single time when you can say that, oh, I am the best for this role and they should hire me. Like, if that really happened in reality, the world would be a very different place. But that's not the reality, right? So, yeah, I mean, abundance mindset, build, on things that uh, you know you can do for others, and build a relationship. Like, again, it's always about the relationship. Money is just a transactional part of what you're doing with the client, the deliverables you're giving, all of that. Money is not the end all ever. And Yeah, which is why I'm totally open to collaborating, meeting new people, helping people. Like, I do so many random calls, and like, people, if you go to my LinkedIn, I have a Calendly link over there. You just go, open it up, look at my calendar, book a slot. Like, very, very occasionally have I said, like, oh, I don't think I can help you or anything. I usually just pick up the call, and I'm like, hey, what do you want? How can I help you? Is there anything that I can help you with? And just have that conversation. I mean, at the end of the day, again, abundance mindset, you're all climbing up the mountain together. And you never know when you're going to need someone to maybe hold your hand as you climb up, or maybe you tumble and fall and you need someone to pick you up. You never know. And both of those points, it's too late to then figure out how to make a community, make friends, find people who have your back. So yeah, it's all about building together and abundance. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
That's an amazing the perspective to the whole thing, right? This abundance mentality. Uh,
Yeah.
so I have a couple of questions around how that transition would look like for someone just getting into the game, right? You have these usual, how do I go about pricing and stuff like that. So I'll start off with this one. For someone in a full-time gig, uh, but trying to slowly start taking up side projects, not necessarily venturing into freelancing full time, but rather I see like I have a weekend free, I feel like I can take up some more work, there is some bandwidth with my schedule. So how do you what would your suggestions be to get that first client when you essentially don't have any brand built, or you don't even have like the time and energy to go about building one, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because before I quit and became a full-time freelancer, I also was like doing it half-half and kind of juggling and figuring out, how does this thing work, and can I do this thing? So I think the first thing that you have to do is figure out your limitations, and figure out the kind of work that you can do within those hours. So for example, like if you want to take up, say, content writing right on the side, um, you could totally do that, but thing is that you have to be very strict with your boundaries. Like if it's work time and you are obviously working full time and your job is 9 to 5, you ideally shouldn't be working on freelance stuff during those hours, and you should only be working on it later. And that could also mean that you are sacrificing on things that maybe you are a little unhappy with. For example, like when I was freelancing, there were times where I was working till 12, 1, because I would come home from work, relax a little bit, rest my eyes, eat dinner, and then only start working on client stuff. So there were nights that I was up like really late, like 12, 1, 2. And that's not an everyday thing, but there are those kind of sacrifices you'll have to make initially. When it comes to getting your first customer as a part-time freelancer, I think first is you need to obviously have a portfolio, right? Like, what are you going to show to this person who wants to hire you out? So you need to have some sort of portfolio or proof of work, or something to show them. So that is point one. Point two, I would say, is you need to be very communicative about the limitations and about the things that you are comfortable with and you are not. So for example, when I was working freelance, right, I made it very clear, freelance and full-time, I made it very clear to my clients that, like, hey, I'm working a full-time job. I was in office at that time. I was like, I could probably talk to you during lunchtime or after like 6 when I get home. So that way they also know and they respect the fact that you respect your job. um, so yeah, you have to like be very communicative about what your boundaries are. The next thing I would say is that when you're closing your client, right, as a freelancer, plus if you're working a full-time job and you tell them, one of the traps that I got stuck into was, I had clients come and tell me like, oh, you're working a full-time job anyway, like why are you charging so much? But that's where the problem starts, because if you don't know how much to charge right from the get go, increasing your rate up to what you will be happy with might not always be possible. So I would say, before you even close your first client, talk to a couple of freelancers that are in your domain, in your niche, in your, I don't know, city even, and basically just get a gauge of the market. Like most freelancers hold their price list very, very close to their hearts, because it's obviously something that they have come up with and how they value their time and effort and all of that. But you can get a brief understanding, like, okay, hey, I'm thinking of picking up content writing. What are the rates like? And then you'll probably hear everything from 1 rupee a word, you will hear up to $5 a word, $15, $10, whatever. I mean, I don't know, whatever that number is. And it'll differ per industry. So once you get a gauge on that, you'll be able to kind of figure out how much should you charge. And don't get screwed into that rut of like, oh, you're working a full-time job. Why are you charging so much? Like, if they say that to you, it's probably a red flag. Like, I would try and maybe rebuttal it once. But if they don't seem to be able to pay what I expect from the amount of work that I am putting in, probably better to walk away. And yeah, the next thing I would say is just use some really cool tools and hacks and stuff. So, like, for example, now Gmail has the feature of send later, but before there was Boomerang. So, I used to use that so that, like, even if I work the night, I don't send my clients the stuff at like 3 in the morning to their inbox. I kind of schedule it in and it'll go to them at 10:30 in the morning. So you can do that with Boomerang. There are other things as Zapier if you want to like get into some high tech automation and all of that. Just basic things to kind of make sure that your clients get their stuff on time with the highest quality ever. But yeah, I mean, it's again discipline, setting your boundaries, believing in yourself, and being aware of what's happening around you. I think that's the basic of it.
Yeah. So, what is your 2 cents on pricing? I mean, no pun intended. Uh,
Yeah.
so, you have all these different, per word, you have per project, per blog article. So, how would someone go about setting it at first? And when do you revisit? When do you know you have grown as a freelancer where you should be charging more than what you had been doing, right? So that I put that as like the second part of the question.
Yeah, yeah. So first part is obviously some sort of permutation and combination of talking to people and figuring out what they are charging and people who are doing it obviously day to day. So figure that out, figure out that number. Again, there's no right or wrong. Like, for example, like I have moved out of the per word thing. I don't do it per word. Like I worked on a client's thing, and it was like a couple of pages for a website, and he asked me how much, and I said like, I won't do it per word. I'll do it per page or by the hour or whatever. And we agreed to a number, and yeah, he sent it over, and it was very very smooth. So you have to figure out from the way the client is speaking to you as to what method you're picking, and then obviously stick to your guns. And um, don't bargaining is probably the worst thing ever. Like it's something that I absolutely despise, because like I'm like, hey, listen, I know my worth. If you don't value me that much or are not able to pay me, that's cool, I'll send you to someone else. Like that's the kind of attitude I have now. And that's come with a lot of confidence, because it takes a lot of guts to say like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't come down to your price. Because clients will ask the most ridiculous things. Like I've had clients come and ask me to like reduce the budgets by like 30,000. I'm like, are you joking? Like, I'm sorry, but are you joking? So yeah, you have to very much stick to your own guns, know your worth, and stick to it, and don't move from it. I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself. Um, how do you know when you want to pick up your prices? That is a great question, because I would say, like, as you freelance, right, there are two or three services or kinds of things that you will be doing repeatedly. And the benefit is that once you have been doing it right for x number of time, and you've got a strong portfolio. Say for example, you picked up like cryptocurrency and you're writing like journal articles and blogs or whatever. You write one, so for example, you write 1 2 3 4 5, like that doesn't make you an expert. Like I think up to like maybe, I don't know, 10 or whatever that number is. Till then you're just kind of learning and picking up the strings. Then from say maybe article or piece number 11 to maybe 15, you're like, okay, maybe I can try and ask for more money and see what happens. And it could even be with the same client, it could be with a new client. The benefit of the new client is that they obviously don't know what rate you started at. So for example, if you started with someone for 2000 and you tell this new client like, hey, I need 3.5, he'll either say yes or no or whatever. So you have to have a significant amount of stuff under your belt to be able to raise your prices. Because if you are like doing like 5 articles and then you're like, oh, I should be paid more, uh, might be a reality, might not be a reality. I mean, if those 5 articles were published in like, some crypto, like very cool websites, and has your name on it and all of that, then that's a different story. But that's like a once in a blue moon kind of a situation. So um, I would say look at your pricing and look at your offerings once you have a significant amount of information under your belt that can help you prove why you should be paid more. If you can't answer that question yourself, your client is probably going to question and wonder why you're charging so much. So unless if you got it, go for it. There's nobody stopping you. And another thing is, always be ready to negotiate on pricing models. I'm just saying it in terms of, like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I had a client who had initially asked me for like a project price for like a couple of deliverables. And then I gave it to him. And then, like, he took a couple of days and looked at it. And then he realized, like, hey, we're not ready for this right now. Like, so he came back to me and he's like, hey, could we hire you out by the hour? And before you start out anything, just let us know how much time it'll take you, and we'll pay you by the hour. So the deliverables went down, but at least I still got the client, and we're working on an hourly basis. And that's fine. I mean, it works out. I mean, I'm not making the amount of money that I had hoped to make, uh, but at the end of the day, I mean, the lifetime value of this client is still higher than zero for me, which is a win. Because even if I'm getting paid per hour, I'm probably doing just maybe a couple of things that were in his initial list, but I'm still getting to work with him. So for me, that's a win. So be ready to negotiate on pricing models. Some people might not want to do per word, some people might want to do per word. So figure it out, but always have those numbers ready before you talk to a client. If for whatever reason you don't have those numbers ready, don't blurt out a number on the phone. Just say, I'll email you, or let me just do some maths and get back to you. It's better to think about your number before blurting it out. And don't get too frazzled that you have to give out a number like right there and then. You can even just cut the call, work backwards, say, okay, if I was charging 10,000 for this, presuming I was going to take X number of hours, how do I rework it and make some money over no money, if the client is willing to work with you but wants a different model. So that's always possible. But yeah, don't ever blurt out a number just because. That's probably the worst thing you can do.
How do you deal with research heavy pieces, right? For example, when you say it could be a very small 500 word article, but it turned out you might have had to put like a 5 hour, even 6 hour research if you're talking about something like crypto. How do you bring that into the equation?
So I mean, uh, again, if you're doing it by word and it's research heavy, then you might want to charge something. So, for example, if it was not research heavy and you were charging, say, 2 rupees, but it is research heavy, so now you need to charge 8 rupees per word. Just again, let your client know. Um, if you want to do it per word, then that's how it works. If you know that you have to do a lot of research and writing and editing, obviously, and getting it all polished, maybe per hour works better for you. So, for example, if you want to say, like, hey, my per hour rate is $4,000. I think this article will take me 90 minutes. That's X amount. And would you be willing to pay? So another thing to remember is that whatever pricing model you pick, you ideally don't want them to be marginally different from each other. So, for example, if that guy wants a 800 word uh, article, and you're going to have to research it, and you would have charged per word X, when if he asks you to change a pricing model to per hour, take that into consideration so that the price differential also doesn't look that different. um, that is another place where you can actually screw yourself over, because if you say per word is $1 but per hour is 3,000, there's a marginal difference, marginal. So make sure whatever your pricing adds up to either the same amount, or you know takes into account, maybe it could be up, it could be down, whatever, but your pricing between your models should ideally remain the same. Which is why I say it's better to be like, okay, I'll get back to you with the price. So for example, on the phone, you're like, oh, this piece is going to cost you 5,000, and then he says, oh, can we do it by word? Don't just blurt out and hit yourself in the leg. Like, just say, I'll call you back, and do the math and figure it out so that the differential is not visibly different.
That makes sense. So, as we come to the close, many rapid fire, if I can put in that way. So, what's your response when people ask for samples?
Cool, how much are you paying?
Oh, even for samples is that's
Yeah. If I have a portfolio filled with stuff and you still don't trust me and you still want a sample, cool, you pay me, I'll do your sample. Because I mean, I'm not going to work for free, right? Like, even if I do a sample and you use it, right, I've made zero money over there, or my time is not valued at that. So, you want a sample? That's cool. Like, you let me know how much you're ready to pay. Nothing's for free.
Joker.
Yeah, nothing ever.
Uh, so, what are your top three resource recommendations between books, podcasts, uh, communities, blogs to follow for people wanting to pick up freelancing?
Yeah, so I would say there is a really cool Google Chrome extension called Zest, Zest. It's very, very cool. It's basically like a multi format content aggregator. um, so I love that extension because every time I open a new tab, it like shows up with some really cool articles and podcasts and videos, and they've got all sort of formats. And it really helps keep me up to date with what's happening. And it's I think from what I understand, it's a lot of like user generated content. Like Zest is not a publishing house.
Mm.
They just kind of curate and collate and show it to you in an algorithm that you like. So it's very, very useful, very, very cool. um, Another one that I would say is on LinkedIn, for example, I would say like definitely follow the top like 10, 20 people in your industry or your niche. For me it's marketing, and there's so many awesome people on LinkedIn. I the reason I love LinkedIn so much is because I learn so much, and I get to have such cool conversations with very, very interesting people who are way smarter than I am. And yeah, it's just very, very interesting.
Who's your top three list of people to follow on LinkedIn?
Top three. So there's a marketer. I think his name is Mayur Gupta. He's in the US. He was ex CM of Spotify, if I'm not wrong. So he's very, very cool. He writes very, very good stuff. Then there's a marketing person from PayPal. I forgot his name, but he's very, very good on LinkedIn. He posts such cool stuff.
Narayan?
Then there's his name's what did you say?
Narayan.
Yes, that's him. He writes very, very well. It's always such a delight to read his posts. The next one, obviously, is David Gerhardt. He is CMO at Privy. Very, very cool stuff. And then there is Sangram, who is running a community also called Peak Community, which is a community of marketers. He also writes very, very well. And yeah, three, four, and last one I would say Vani from Kalari. She writes very interesting stuff as well. And last one, I know I've probably crossed the five or whatever that number three was, but there is a VC guy. I think he's from Better Capital, if I'm not wrong, and he writes really, really well. There's a VC fund. Called Better, and I think he writes beautifully from there. So, yeah, VC guys, very nice stuff. Marketeers, a ton of them to follow. No shortage of that whatsoever.
So, what are the three red flags in a client? You see this, just run the opposite direction.
Uh, Takes time to respond to your messages. Like, I mean, more than what is necessary. Like, if someone takes 2 days to respond to a message of like, "Hey, is edit one good?" or "Hey, are my samples okay?" or whatever, just probably forget that client. Second is advance. Like I said earlier as well, like you deserve in advance, and everybody is in that mindset to give you that advance if you ask. So the responsibility lies on you to ask. Definitely ask. If they say no or hesitate to pay you in advance, that's probably a bad sign. Um, and third, I would say is uh, so there's a limit which is okay of back and forth, like, hey, I want this, hey, is this okay, is the price okay, blah blah blah. Like, this is obviously while you're chatting, right? Before you started working. But there are sometimes when it's just like, listen, me talking to you is wasting my time and resources because it doesn't seem like you're going to pay. So if someone is just continuously messaging and going back and forth and not closing, after to a limit where you're just like, what the hell? Like, why are you not just telling me what you want and we can close it and move on? You should probably walk away, because that means the client probably doesn't even understand what they want. um, and I think the last one is people that when you ask for details, they can't give you details about the project, or they act sketchy. That is definitely one where you have to be very careful. So um, I had a guy approach me recently, and he wouldn't give me details on what he wanted. He was just like, oh, we need website copy, oh, we need to do this, but I can only tell you once you sign an NDA and blah blah blah. Like, he just made it so complicated, and I was like, if you just let me know what industry it is, what do you do, and what do you want me to do, life would just be very easy right now, and you're making it very very tough. So yeah,
Fit
I mean,
into
didn't work
everyone.
out. Yeah, it did not work out with him, because I was like, you don't even know what you want, you're not telling me what to do. How am I supposed to even price you? Like, I don't even understand what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, I mean, just general, like, just, I mean, use your brains, and if something seems wrong, it most likely is going to be wrong.
Right. So the last one, what are your top three tool recommendations? I know you mentioned Zapier, Calendly. So do you have anything else to add to that takes up your productivity up a notch?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I talk to my phone a lot. I'm like, hey Siri, can you please write down on my calendar? But I said, hey Siri, and it started listening. But yeah, basically, I do that a lot. And I'm just like, hey, can you make a note of this, please? Can you please remind me to do this? So it literally acts like my virtual assistant. Like, it's just all automated and it's awesome. That is one of them. Second, I would say Grammarly is my savior. Obviously, I mean, I'm also human, right? I'm not perfect. So I could make some grammatical errors and, some typos and all of that. So Grammarly definitely is a huge savior. And the third one I would say is Pomodoro Tracker. What it basically does is you set it to say that, hey, I want to work for 20 minutes in 3 sessions, but in between each session, I want a 3 minute break, or whatever, whatever works for you. So it's basically a way of working where you work in short sprints rather than like 1 hour, 2 hour sprints. So you kind of break it up into 20, 30 minutes. And after X number of short sprints, you get one long break. So I think that really helps, because sometimes you're just stuck and you don't know what to write, or you just, you're too confused. So with the Pomodoro tracker, what it does is it like tells you like, hey, you have only 21 minutes to finish this thing. You either finish it or you just sit and stare at your screen. So yeah, it really helps, because like that way I can also like figure out like, hey, I need to write this quick thing. I know it'll take me like 15 minutes. I'll do it now. Then I'll do this other thing and get ready for the next sprint. So it just helps with organizing your day a little better.
Hmm. So that wraps up the episode, and this has been one of the most insightful episodes I've done personally for me.